Okay, so we are officially started our May 18th meeting of the CCGC. It's 10:04. Thank you all for, again, working so hard on this project.
Sorry.
That's okay. Just as part of the welcome part, some of the background on the minutes. I know they were really long. I tried to catch as much as a detail last meeting that we had, because it was one of those meetings where it's important that we catch the detail. Hopefully today will be a little bit more directed. I did not receive any update from Kurt regarding information we were going to share with the property owners going forward. We would kind of make a decision to get some specifics from him, and I did not. I tried to bullet on the minutes the to-do things. I tried to highlight responsibilities. I've not heard from anybody on those as of yet since our last meeting. I can tell you that I spoke with Ed Adante of our Public Works Department. I can give you his opinion on the driveways on the street. And he has not seen any of the photos, the plans from BSC personally, although I did invite him to this meeting. His recommendation, and I guess especially to you, Jesse, is that we make the driveways at the street look standard. He thinks we were on the right path, that we don't take anything away driveway wise. He doesn't feel that way on the sort of man-made parking spots that are on the green area. He feels if they're on town property, for those little self-made spots, you know, we do what we have to do. If they end up making them later, that's not on us. That was his recommendation on that. And then, and I'm not sure I'm going to verbalize this correctly, the driveways where we have to do some work on to make them easily passable by the homeowner, but line up with our sidewalk. He feels we have to make those without any bumps, and we shouldn't have to move the sidewalk for them. Does that make sense to you, Jesse?
Yeah, and that's something that we worked through since the last meeting, and I can go through that.
Okay. I just wanted to get you some feedback on that. I also talked via text with the clerk who runs our planning commission, and she feels that we don't have to go to planning because we're not taking any property, so we don't have to get any type of referral on Hartford Avenue. However, if we want to update them and get their feelings on the project, I guess, we could attend one of their meetings. She suggested the June meeting. I said, I'm not sure we'll be ready for that, but I appreciated her invitation. So from her perspective, and again, she works in zoning, we do not need to get any planning referral for the project. And I don't know, I know you were going to look into some things on that end, but I just thought I'd share that from her perspective. And that's all I have on my to-do list.
Mary Jo, could you repeat the second thing Ed Adante said? Because you're kind of breaking up on me. I got the first part on the town right of way. What was the second comment he had?
About the driveways that needed to maybe be modified somewhat because the properties require it. He just said you shouldn't have any bumps. I think what he meant was, you know, lift so that the cars bottom out. Okay. Should be smooth. Okay. That's how I took his interpretation of that.
Okay. Thank you.
I am going to later this week take my computer down there and show him the spread from BSC so he can visualize what we're talking about. But
right.
He's pretty busy these days.
Mhm.
That's all I have on under that. We've had Ed, we have Kurt yet? No?
No, I don't see him, and he hasn't responded to my message, though he's showing active on my end.
Okay.
I don't know if he's having trouble getting in. No.
Could be. Well, Kurt, do you want to, I mean, Jesse, do you want to go ahead with updating us on what you know, and we'll go from there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can take a stab at it here.
Go for it.
So related to the driveways, and again, I know Kurt has some more administrative topics to discuss, but from the design piece that I've been working on, specific to the driveways at those properties that are lower than the street elevation, we've been working through those as part of the preliminary design drawings. And what we ended up having to do is much like the phase one section is to actually include ramps to kind of ramp the sidewalk down to get the elevation of the driveway apron down lower, so it's a little bit more compatible with the existing grades. We still have 6 to 8, 10 inches of grade difference at some of those driveways, but certainly a lot less than if we were to just not ramp down to the driveways. So I think that will work pretty well. Most of the driveways, as you recall, are gravel or just lawn anyway. So it should be able to modify those pretty easy. There's a couple that are paved that we might have to get some easements onto their property just to make that up.
Okay.
So that was that.
Does anybody, any of the committee that's on, have any questions on that at this point?
For the ramp, do we know how it's going to be constructed? Like, will it just be?
It'll be a typical curb ramp, so no more than 6 inches. Ramping up at 12 to 1 is the maximum. So that gets us 6 inches closer to the existing. And when I first went across it and held the grade of the sidewalk, we were like 14 inches above existing. So we really wanted to kind of get that down closer. So that helps.
Okay.
And in most cases, we have close to 10 feet before the right of way. But again, we don't want to create a condition where a car is going to bottom out going up and over that high point of the sidewalk. So we might have to get an easement onto their, level that off and make that a little bit smoother transition. But for the most part, the design is pretty much set as we talked about. 7.5 total feet from face of curb to back of sidewalk. And that includes a 2.5 foot stamped colored concrete kind of utility strip for signage, mailboxes, trash receptacles, those type of things. And then a 5 foot concrete sidewalk. I actually got a message from Kurt. He's having trouble connecting. I don't know if it's on his end or not.
There might be a lot of people on today. I was in one room of my house and was reported that I had low bandwidth and I had to move also. I see someone coming in, call you in user two.
It's Bonnie.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you? I'm just calling in because I'm on the road.
you. We just did a welcome, Bonnie, and just to update the committee on feedback, verbal feedback from Ed Adante and Kim Groves on the Hartford Avenue side of things. Jesse Harris just gave us a little update on the driveway designs, in particular the ones that we have some ramping concerns and how they apparently have gotten most of that fixed. Yes. And
Yep.
and there'll be a couple driveways that were paved as opposed to just gravel and dirt that we will probably need to get onto their property. So we'll need some approval to do that so that we can smooth out those driveways. Did I do that okay, Jesse?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay, great. Anything else, Jesse, from your perspective?
Yeah, I actually was just digging through the file. Kurt had a little agenda, that he wanted to go through. He did get some feedback from DOT on Shore Road, and I guess there was a death in his family or something that was supposed to review. So he has not reviewed anything further based on the plans that we had sent to get feedback from them. So we're kind of on standstill for that part of the project. There was discussions about relocation of encroachments on town property at our last meeting. There's a couple fences. There's one in particular at 37 Hartford Avenue that'd basically be in the sidewalk. So that one has to be moved, and right now I'm showing it being moved to essentially right at the right of way or just inside the right of way on the property owner's side. And then there was one.
How many inches is that? Do you know?
The total length?
That's going to be moved from where it's at to where it needs to be.
It's probably 6 feet or so.
That's a lot.
Yeah, because it's kind of at an angle. It's not parallel to the street line. So the southern side is closer to our back of sidewalk, and then it kind of gets closer to the road as you move north.
Okay. So we'll need approval for that. Is that correct?
Well, I think that what we had discussed last time is, as part of the project, are we removing it and letting the homeowner or property owner reinstall it, or is this project going to remove it and reinstall it for the homeowner? And I know somebody had mentioned, some of these people are elderly and they may not have the means to reinstall, at their cost. So, I guess that's more of a discussion with the committee on whether or not this project covers that cost.
All right. So they're one of the properties where we're waiting for information to have that discussion with the property
Right.
owners too. Okay.
And I'm looking at the other one here. 37 was one. There's a little bit of kind of hedgerow encroachment at 13, but not too bad. And at the north side of 37 Hartford Avenue, I went back out there week before last. I went out there and looked at those areas a little bit more specifically. And since I've done the grading, the back of sidewalk will be about 12 inches higher than the existing at those hedges. But I think we have enough room. We have about 6 feet or so at the back sidewalk to right away to slope that down. So I would be comfortable putting a little bit of fill over those roots of that area to get that to kind of blend back in. I don't think it's kind of hard to tell, if the actual shrub itself would need to be pruned back, if that would conflict with the back of sidewalk. But that might be something that may need to be done. I think we could install it and kind of look at it later.
Okay.
But as you all know, when you prune back a shrub or a hedgerow, that much, it's going to be a bunch of sticks for a while. Not the most aesthetically pleasing. But again, if we don't want encroachment of the shrub itself onto the sidewalk, it's something we might have to do.
So if we take the path of least resistance, if you will, and put the sidewalk in before trimming.
Yeah.
And then look at it, you're saying that there won't be any difficulty installing the sidewalk and leaving the bush, and it will survive, and then we can decide if we think we need to trim it back for pedestrian safety, basically.
Right. Yeah, I think it'll be okay to do the work to get it in there. And then we could revisit that once we visually know exactly where the back sidewalk is and how much it might encroach on the walking area.
That sounds like a good option to me. What is everybody?
Yeah, I'd hate to go through there and prune it back severely, and then we don't really need to, and then there's a bunch of sticks left sitting there to fill back in over a course of a couple of years.
I think anything we don't have to do, probably shouldn't do. If we don't need to, really tidy up that whole line if it's not going to interfere with the sidewalk. There's in front of 37, that fence clearly has to move because the sidewalk can't go through, and it's really way onto the town right of way. But other stuff that's some branches here or there, or a fence a couple inches over, I don't think we should be sticklers.
Right. Let's see.
Eric and Bonnie?
I agree with that. I mean, it'll make the homeowner happier if we don't destroy a bush to keep the clearance, and let's just do the things that we really need to do for the project.
And I agree as well. Anything that is not necessary, and we don't want to make waves with people.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
All
You
right.
got this, Jesse.
Yeah. The other thing related to driveways, and as I had mentioned before Bonnie joined, that we had to actually, as we were going through the driveways, those low properties, and I was actually just looking back at our plans also at the convenience store at the end of the street on Hartford Avenue. We ramped the sidewalk down to the driveway, 6 inches per the maximum allowed for ADA access, which helped us a lot in terms of getting us closer to existing grade at those properties that we were already concerned about. So that gets us probably within 6 or 8 inches within existing, which should be able to make those blend in without too much trouble. We'll look at that a little bit closer related to the comment on making sure we don't have the cars bottom out when they're going over that. The other thing that we did was we standardized all single single driveways. Everything's standardized to 12 feet. And that seems to work the best as kind of an average amongst everybody. There's one in particular at 21 Hartford Avenue that was constrained by property line in their house. They're kind of a narrower lot along the street. That we went down to a narrower driveway to get it to just match up with their existing width. But everything else is pretty standard. All the curb returns into the driveway is that 5-foot radius. So everything will look nice and consistent down the street. The shared ways, these are a little bit less standardized just because I was trying to match some of the existing widths that they already had, but generally around 16 feet wide for the shared driveways. 27.
Morning, Kurt's joining.
Hi, Kurt.
Okay.
Sorry I was late. Computer issues.
Happens to the best of us.
Okay,
Jesse?
I was attempting to go through your meeting topics, and I got through basically the sidewalk and the relocation encroachment, and I was talking about the standardized driveway aprons.
Yeah, keep going, please. And then we could just circle back to some of the other items.
Yeah.
Are you sharing your screen, Jesse? Because I can't see the drawings.
Yeah, no, I wasn't. There's Mary Jo and Jim are online.
Yeah.
And then everybody else is via phone. But I can share.
I can see the screens on my phone when I know when like Kurt showed last meeting, I could see it. Yeah, I can see those.
Oh, that
There we go. Okay, excellent. Yep, got it.
looks nice. So,
Yeah,
Jeff,
so-
you were saying the shared driveways are about 16 foot wide?
Yeah, so like right here at 5 and 7, I tried to standardize those. Again, as you see it down the street, the curb returns into the driveways are all standard at 5 feet. But then I tried to make the width of those shared driveways around 16 feet, but that varied a little bit depending on how we met some of the existing driveways.
Oh, yeah.
Mainly when they had, like here at 27, they have a paved section. So I held their outside line, and then I made it so that it came across to 29 and held. And if you recall, 29 is the one that has kind of a newer patch right where we're showing this ramp. That we believe they just kind of paved it to give them an extra space in front of their house. But I got rid of that and gave them a driveway curb cut that generally aligned with kind of the edge of their driveway.
So Jesse, just to confirm, I have just a quick question on any of these. So the portion the cars drive on, that's actually sidewalk, is that lower than the actual sidewalk? That does it ramp up and down? Is that what the proposal is? Is that how it works?
Yeah, because to try and get the driveway to meet existing grade as close as possible, so that we don't have we don't have to encroach onto their property to make that grade difference work out, and as well as we don't have a bottoming out of a car trying to traverse up and over our sidewalk.
Okay, I was just trying to visualize in my head the
Yeah.
sidewalk goes
So-
up and down as you go down the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very, very similar to what we did on phase 1.
Okay. Thank you.
So I am afraid I've got this recording message right in the middle of the map, and I'm afraid to X out of it because I'm afraid I'll stop recording. I'm not sure. So it's right in the middle of everything I'm trying to look at. Maybe I can move this up. I forgot about that. That didn't happen before. So the width on the single driveways is about what, Jesse?
12 feet,
About 12.
what I was trying to shoot for. In the town ordinance right now is on singles is no less than 10 feet. And I think the maximum is 16.
Oh, wow. That's great. It looks beautiful from what I can see. So,
Yeah, no, I think it'll really look nice. It will certainly clean up that edge. We'll organize the signage as part of the project, the mailboxes. Just kind of, uniform curb cuts along that entire stretch.
and do you think this will be the version of the plan that we need to share with the property owners?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything at this point, from a sidewalk layout standpoint that's going to change. It's really how we address and how much encroachment we want to take on as part of the project to get the grading to work out.
Yeah, I think at this point, if I can chime in, that's really the remaining piece. I think everything else is in place for us to literally move through and complete the final design. It's just those few properties. That's really the last piece to the puzzle in figuring out how we either engage those people or determine what's our approach going to be so we're consistent across the board, that we're not kind of like what we talked about last time, not leaving things very open-ended, which in my opinion translates to a blank checkbook, right? With the committee's name on it. We don't want to go there. So, Jesse, I'm not sure if you mentioned some of the ideas that you and I were developing as far as options to present to people. Did you talk about that at
No,
all?
I haven't got there yet. No.
So if this is a good time to mention that, and Jesse, please chime in. But we were, as a follow-up to the last meeting, Jesse and I were talking about, okay, how do we come up with design options that are not open-ended, knowing that for these properties, you could come up with design solutions as far as the imagination. We clearly don't want to go there, especially in a situation like this where we want something that's practical, that looks good, that is safe, that's affordable, and that keeps the property owner happy. We don't want to get into a situation where the property owner looks at this as an opportunity to do a bunch of work that they've been deferring for the past 20 years at the convenience of the committee. So we were kind of thinking, and this is something we really wanted to discuss at today's meeting, get your thoughts. Maybe we present people with a defined number of options, almost like a menu. And we say, you can pick from this set, whether it be 2, 3, whatever you want it to be, these define approaches. And Jesse could talk about kind of the different approaches, and then within each approach, there's a little bit of, I'll call them enhancements or something, just to make it palatable to a property owner. And I'm talking about in the cases where we may actually have to do work on someone's property. And then I feel that we do want to offer them something that is reasonable, that does include some minor enhancements. And what I mean by that is maybe there's a few plantings involved. I look at that as pretty short money, few flowers or something like that, that Jesse picks out just to make sure that people don't say, no, I don't want you working on my property, because then we run into a situation where we're forced to stay on the town side of the right-of-way line. And it could make things more difficult to make the transition. So let's talk about that a little bit. Jesse, maybe talk about some of the options that we were kind of kicking around that we definitely, this is one of those areas where the design is one thing, we can design anything, but we really are seeking the committee's feedback on even the approach to this piece of the project.
Yeah, so in terms of the options, I've come up with 3 kind of basic options. Option one here on the screen would be providing some sort of concrete step from the back of the public sidewalk down to their walkway, their doorway, whatever they may have existing already. The other would be in areas that may not have a doorway or walkway leading out the front, and there might be some other obstruction like a fence or something else that is on their property that we don't want to disturb, that we do some sort of retaining mechanism, and this is where those additional kind of sub options would probably be available. In option 2, I'm showing kind of a 2-foot wide planted area with some flowers or something like that, and then some sort of retaining structure. And Kurt and I had talked about, this could be a nice granite type of curb, and not your traditional roadway curb. It'd be more landscape curb with like a nice bull nose on it. We could do a hammer finish. You wouldn't have to, you could do 4 inches wide, something that doesn't read like a roadway curb. Something nice. You could go precast concrete. A lot of times those look really nice nowadays, where they color and texture them to look like natural stone. To something as simple as just a landscape timber. Certainly not as durable, but again, we're trying to, from our point of view, we're trying to just eat up the grade change difference between the existing and proposed without filling up against their chain link fence or some other structure or element that they have on their property. And then option 3 is certainly do nothing and just slope the grade down to the right of way, and that's it. Certainly option 1 and 2 would be utilized where there's a larger or a much higher difference in grade. Certainly option 1 with stairs, and that option 1 cross section is actually taken at I think it's 27 Hartford Avenue, where it has the wood steps coming down, and then they have like a wood landing at the bottom of the stairs. So I'm showing 1 step, and then you would potentially fill up, or maybe even, this project paves a little walkway to meet their landing. So it basically fills that low point so they don't have puddling situation there. There might be situations where we have to get 6 more inches to get down to a walkway that they already have, so then we could add a second set of steps. And by code, we can go two steps or no greater than 12 inches of grade change without handrails.
Jesse, this is Kurt. Quick question. What was, and this will help the committee develop this mental picture, and then I'm actually going to share a photo in a second that I took out in Hebron. What along this particular stretch, what's the greatest grade differential that we're dealing with?
It's probably 15 inches, if I recall, was
Which
the word.
isn't as bad as we initially thought it would be, and that's why that supplemental surveying was so important that we talked about last time, because your eye will fool you every time. So that's why we wanted to get that stuff. So in my mind, I was thinking it was 2.5 feet. So that's actually pretty good. Hey Jesse, if I can share my screen.
Is that from the top of sidewalk, 15 inches, Jesse?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay.
And then I'll turn it right back to you, Jesse. I'm just going to show you a photo that I took in Hebron. I have a habit of seeing things pulling over and taking photographs of the world around us. My family sometimes yells at me. So I just want to, okay. So what I'm going to show you is, this is a sidewalk that they did in Hebron, and it's a good example of a slope. Can you see that?
No, there it is.
There it is.
Okay.
Yep.
So although this is more of what it's going to look like along Route 85, although we're pretty flat, but I thought this was an interesting one because it shows how they just sloped down from the back of sidewalk. Now, in this case, clearly it's just a undeveloped, this is more of a drainage swale, but with the most basic approach, simply sloping down, this is kind of what it would look like. There, that's probably greater than what we have, but it's kind of close. But this I thought was just a good example of what sort of the most basic, hey, let's just from back of sidewalk, slope it right down and seed it. This is kind of what it would look like. So I just thought it was a good real world example of something out there. So I'll stop sharing, and then Jesse, you can get the plans back up there.
Thank you, Kurt.
And then when we're done talking about Harford Avenue, when we talk about Shore Road, I have a few more photos that I took that'll be some other examples.
Yeah, so actually I just double checked. That cross section of option 1 is at 21 Hartford Avenue, where we have these stairs that come down to a wood landing. They have a gravel walkway that goes off to the left or to the right, depending if you're facing their house, to their driveway. But that's where, they had that landing at the bottom, and then another 6 inches or so to the grass. And as you can see here, we're at 1829 at back of sidewalk, and we have this 17 contour generally at the bottom of their landing. So that's where, in that scenario, and at 23, possibly at 27, another one at 29, 31, these all have walkways already leading to essentially the right of way. But if we wanted to provide that connectivity from the public sidewalk to theirs, we may have to put in a step or two to make the grade up with those. Right now, I'm not, other than this one here at 29, I'm not showing any other connections, but I think that would be, or 23, a connected to, that might be worthwhile for the committee to do that. Because I think what the intent was originally, when the sidewalk was more or less at the right of way, they did have that connection. And then over time, that walkway disappeared. their sidewalk didn't.
So are these the only areas where we would be doing more than just some seed and, you know, some dirt and seed? Jesse, and when you went back out there, these particular, like from 21 down to Bocce Lane, or not so far down to Bocce, but those are the areas you're referring to, doing something over beyond dirt and seed.
That's right. Yeah, and that's where a
21
lot
to
of
23.
these. Yeah. You know, there might be other properties going towards Hartford Avenue where we might want to just make that connection of their walkway to our sidewalk. But they won't necessarily need a additional measure like a step or some sort of retaining structure.
Okay, thank you.
So I
And-
guess that's a good question for the committee. And you don't have to decide that today, but in those cases where there's a walkway that does not extend to the edge of right of way or something, do you want to include in the project connecting the existing walkway to the back of sidewalk? So in other words, fill the gap.
Personally, I think it would be this is Jim. I think it'd be a good idea, because it would be, you know, a shirt tail untucked if we have a sidewalk and then there's someone's existing sidewalk and then we just leave this gap with you know, kind of just sloping down and seeded or what have you. Could be that the homeowner doesn't want it for some reason or other, but just in terms of initial design that we would present, I would prefer to see us connect to their sidewalk. It'll look nicer. The homeowner won't be stuck with the sidewalk to nowhere and then a little ramp up to, you know, a grassy knoll going up to our sidewalk to just tie it all together. You know, unless there's an objection from the homeowner.
So Jim, you're saying if they have a walkway that comes out straight from the house towards the street, we connect. If they have a walkway that goes to their driveway, then we don't have to necessarily do anything because.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that's a good starting point. And I guess it comes down to cost as well.
So 19, which is on the screen there, is a good example where their concrete sidewalk ends at the right of way. So in a sense, we would be filling in between where that walk hits the right of way and the back of sidewalk where you see that spot grade 19.45.
Can those be sloped, Kurt and Jesse? Like a slight slope, not that it has to be perfectly flat. I mean, can we slope down if the grade changes slightly on those areas?
Yeah, I think the closer you get to Shore Road, we could probably do just a slope to connect the two.
Okay.
The other ones that we talked about that are much greater grade difference would require a step or two.
Yeah, I get that. Okay.
The good news is as we approach Hartford Avenue from Bocce, the grades really work in our favor versus the area between 21 and 23 where they're just, that's our low area, if you will. The other ones, I think it'd be pretty straightforward, and the slopes to fill in those gaps would not be dramatic.
Yeah, and these are all non-accessible walkways already anyway, so we wouldn't, you know, meet their accessibility requirements.
And gee, I wonder, that's a great point, Jesse. Would that be something that the local building official would have to sign off on, being that it's a, you know, typically if you had a contractor come in and put a walkway at your house, you'd need to pull a building permit, which then means the local building official needs to review your plans and sign off on them. I think for completeness, if we did that work, we should probably follow that same approach and get the building official sign off on that work. Just so we have our T's crossed and I's dotted if we're not ADA compliant.
This is Mary Jo. Kurt, I think once you guys give us the specifics or your specific recommendations for each property,
Yep.
that would help sharing this information with our building official to get his opinion. You know, because he hasn't been involved in the project at all. So if we can give him the specifics of what we're looking at doing and prior to getting the homeowner's input, get his input.
Yes. Okay.
I don't feel personally qualified that I know enough to just, like I did with Ed and Dante, fill him in. I don't feel I have enough information to fill our building official in. I certainly can invite him to one of our meetings, but I think it would be helpful to send him something for his review.
Sure.
And get his opinion.
Yeah, happy to. So if the committee would like to, and maybe you can just confirm, fill in the gaps, if you will, for lack of a better term, we'll move forward property by property, lay in those sidewalks, and then send it to you, Mary Jo, with a bit of a some backup discussion that then you could pass that on to the building official for his initial feedback. And this is perfect because as we're moving into final design now, this is a great point to kind of do that. And just one other item. So I'm assuming, for example, 17 Hartford Avenue, you see there on your screen, there is no walkway. I'm assuming we would not be contemplating giving them a walkway, correct?
I agree with that, Eric.
I agree too.
Okay, just wanted to confirm. Yeah, that could get expensive if now all of a sudden we're providing everybody with a walkway.
I think the goal is that we don't do something that looks strange. So, you know, if they have a sidewalk coming to the right of way, it sort of makes sense to tie it in. But if they don't, we don't want to have this little stub going to nowhere.
Okay.
I agree.
All right, so we'll get those drawings completed and over to you, Mary Jo, so you can send them on to the building official.
As well as any other information you think he may need to weigh in on as you're doing this, besides these
Okay.
walkways.
Yeah, I'm thinking kind of circling back to what we were talking about as far as engaging the homeowners. It sounds like we need to also give him something that he can look at relative to the work Jesse was just talking about, whether it be a small curb or something, because once again, now that we're weighing, or now that we're on someone's property, it'd probably be good to have him weigh in to even tell us if he needs to be involved in something like that. That work would be done under the project grant. He may say, well, I don't need to be involved, but it'd be good to make him aware of what we're doing, just in case he does say, well, regardless of whether it's being done by the project, as the building official, I do need to be involved because the contractor is going to have to get a permit through my department or my office. And that could be the case, that once we normally for stuff outside the right of way that's considered roadway / transportation, you don't. But now that we're on someone's property, he may then say, okay, now that's my jurisdiction. And we would just simply build that into the contract documents that the contractor needs to pull those permits through the building department.
We didn't do that for lower of Hartford Avenue.
Yeah, we did not. And the reason that we didn't is we were replacing in kind And after talking, actually, it was Keith at the time that said, don't worry about it because you're replacing in kind. You're not really creating anything new. He said, I don't think that's necessary.
I see.
And it may be in this case, same thing, but because we are with these particular properties creating something new, that's where I get a little concerned that it may fall under his purview.
Okay.
Quick question, Kurt. Do you have a sense of the sidewalks that exist coming from the homeowner's front door? Are they in decent shape? Or are there a couple where we're going to be meeting a new sidewalk with something that's kind of rough and broken up?
Yeah, Jim, that is an excellent point. And I'm actually calling up the Hartford Avenue PowerPoint, and I'm going to quickly look. I think it's a mixed bag. I'm just going to actually quickly scan through this to see. Okay, so
Do you want to share that, Kurt?
it's I'm going to go through it so quickly. So I'm looking at, for example, number 7, it's okay. Number 5, looks like number 9. Number 9 has a very small little landing, so it's not really a walkway. 11 has nothing. 13 has nothing. Quite a few of them don't have walkway, so I guess that's actually good news. 19, it looks okay. 21 is the one with the wood landing. So there's an example of where it's a wooden landing, which is not the best. That's a situation where we could end up doing concrete right to the bottom of their step. That's not that big of a deal. 23 looks good. It looks like it's in good shape. 27 is interesting. That's the one with the chain link fence and the brown privacy slats, because their fence is right up against the right of way. That's kind of interesting, but their walkway is in good shape. If you recall, they have a swing gate at their walkway that ends right at the edge of their little landing. 29 does not have a walkway. So
When you say it doesn't have a walkway, does that mean it doesn't cross the right of way?
So for example, 29, it just sort of, there's a landing and then it ends. There is no formal. I'm looking here on the survey. It may be that it's buried in the photo that I'm looking at on 29.
The survey says stone walk.
Yeah, so I'd have to get a different view. The one I'm looking at is kind of skewed and it's hidden in the grass. But we have enough photos where we could get some definitive, but based on this quick look-see, it looks like most of the sidewalks are in pretty decent shape. There's none that are completely deteriorated.
Good.
31 is in phenomenal condition. It's pavers. And then as we get past that, we kind of end up, and don't forget down on, right at the very end, I can't remember what we have, the concrete sidewalk that's in excellent shape, 37, that we'll have to do something with. It looks like Jesse has connected, which I think is absolutely appropriate, but that sidewalk's in really nice condition.
Yeah, and then that first house right on the corner, or that building that has the red painted wooden ramp complex out in the front there, and that
37.
has that secondary door.
The market. Yeah, we need to maintain access to that secondary door.
Yeah, and right now it looks like our our back of sidewalk is right at the edge of their bituminous. That's in front of all that. But I don't know, by the time we kind of grade back, this is where those areas that the grading might work out in our favor here, but we might have to repave a portion of that just to blend it in.
Jesse, do you want me to share my screen? I have a photo of that up.
Yeah.
Okay.
The survey just doesn't show enough detail to really convey what we're looking at there.
Can everybody see that?
Yep.
So if you see that light blue line, that's essentially the back of the right of way. If you look way down, you can see the shrubs that we always use as a point of reference. The right of way is basically at the middle of those shrubs. So our sidewalk, as Jesse was mentioning, is just over the grass into that bituminous area that
Yeah,
they've
the back
got.
sidewalk is kind of right at the edge of the grass there.
So he's got that door. You can see it behind the ramp. Kind of hard to see, but it's a red door on the other side of that ramp system. So we need to maintain access back there. That's some sort of, not sure what it is, but so we need to, so we may have to look at filling in, and this is kind of similar to what we ran into on the first project. This is almost like the one situation where it's very, very similar. We could end up having to do something, either a curb to make that grade transition, or if we had to fill back to that ramp. So we'll look at that a little closer and bring something back to the committee.
And Kurt and Jesse, did we get a final on the driveway solution? Is that up for 21 to 31 or the properties of low elevation? Are we thinking gravel or?
Well, your current town ordinance requires paving up to the right of way or 15 feet, whatever is greater. But I think in this case, if we pave, and most of them again there's one that's like a real coarse gravel, and then there's, I think, a couple that are actually paved, and then there's some that are just grass. So it kind of varies what the material is, but I think as part of the project, we would pave to our right of way, whether they had gravel, grass, or pavement anyway. And then
I
it's
thought we were
how do we
talking
meet
about,
that?
were we talking about concrete?
The
Are you
apron,
talking from the road to the sidewalk?
that'll all be concrete. And then what Jesse's referring to is from the back of sidewalk to
Okay, into their
edge
property.
of, right.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great clarification.
And then the properties that we have to go on to slope that driveway down. And I think there's just a couple of them. Is that correct?
21 to 31. And then Jesse, if you want to maybe share your screen again, we can look at the driveways. So as an example, like 23, they have an apron and then it's just grass. They just park on the grass. So we would not plan on doing anything beyond the right of way. We would slope down. And I guess the question is, if we found that in order to make the transition, let's use 23 as an example, if we did, in order to achieve the appropriate slopes, if we had to end up onto their property with some sort of grade changes, what would that material be? So for example, with 21, or I'm sorry, 23, it's grass. For example, where it says, you see the letters IR there?
Mhm.
Let's say we had to extend into there to make the slopes work. What would that be?
Right. That's my
Yeah,
concern.
yeah. Um, on the one hand, you could say, well, we'll just make it grass like it is today. Okay, that grass has probably been there for a long time. The material's compacted. We go in and try to plant grass on something. It's never going to last. It's going to wash out,
Right.
So in those cases, maybe we do something where we're continuing the pavement where Jesse has it indicated in gray.
Or gravel. Yeah.
Yeah, and we just extend it in and hope that they look at that as a positive. I know I would.
I wanted to throw in something I've seen. They use it under the Williamsburg Bridge in New York City at East River Park, and there's different qualities of it. Some of it can, has a tonnage rating that's really high. You can put heavy equipment on it, but they have these pervious pavers that are actually more like a ring, um, not like your typical paving stones. They're just this ring, and they lock into each other, and grass grows up in the middle of them. And the advantage is that it holds the earth in. It provides almost like a pavement surface, but it has the effect once the grass grows back of looking like grass. And it's able to handle vehicular traffic without it being dug up like gravel. A lot of times it just flies everywhere. It's a mess. If you're going up any sort of a grade, your wheels spin out. Uh, I don't think it's that expensive of an option. We're not going to be putting in industrial grade uh, weight ratings on those driveways. That won't have to handle a semi or a equipment repair truck, but something that will handle your average car to pickup truck. I don't think is that expensive, and we won't be covering a large area. So I just wanted to throw that in there as a possibility.
It sounds like you're talking about like a grass pave type product.
Yeah, it's almost just like a square ring,
Yep.
where it's totally hollow in the middle, so grass
Right.
grows up through it.
Yep.
But
And we've used that with success on some projects.
I think those look good, and they may work well in this really damp, you know, sort of wet environment that we have down there.
Yep. It can help promote that resiliency because we do periodically have flooding and those kinds of things. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Jim. I think it makes sense in these applications. If we decided that if it's grass, we're going to keep it grass, I think we should use a product like that.
Okay.
And Bonnie, wasn't
That's
that
great.
your thought a while ago, kind of like what we did at the boathouse?
Yeah, I think it's called reinforced turf. And I had brought that up too. So I
That's what I
would
meant.
agree that it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also agree with Jim and Bonnie on that. It sounds like in that regard, we also preserve some of the grass over time. We may actually keep the grass in the soil versus just having it rot away.
Which is also good for any runoff. It's always better to have the sort of low impact.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yep. Agree, Bonnie.
Yeah.
For sure.
So this is Jesse, just to clarify, we're just talking about anything outside the right of way. We would do that, not from
Correct.
the sidewalk. Okay.
Correct.
Correct.
If you, hey, Jesse, can I share a screen for a second?
Yep.
And this is for the benefit of those that can, oops, keep forgetting I have to have the image on my screen first. Sorry about that. So I don't know, can you see that?
Yep.
That's one product that's called grass pave, but very similar to what Bonnie and Jim are describing, is basically holds the matrix together. In fact, we used this up at Yukon for a service entrance where they were looking for green solutions. They didn't want it paved because it wasn't used that frequently. They wanted to maintain infiltration and just the look, to have it be green. And we did a road that was, geesh, probably 20 feet wide and probably about 600 feet long with this stuff. And it's pretty neat stuff. And there's few, what we would specify is we wouldn't do it by name. We would give the contractor the option for a few products that are basis of design, but they all achieve the same end.
Well, if I was a homeowner, I would sure appreciate that.
Yeah, it'll look nice, and it'll be good for the project because the grass will hold up better. You won't get those callbacks and people frustrated that the work we did is running off onto their property and those kinds of things. So, okay, we will incorporate that into the design. So I think the remaining piece, circling back a bit, is how do we advance the design on these properties? We will prepare the drawing and send to you, Mary Jo, that kind of shows some of the things and the limits of the work. We'll get the building officials' feedback, but then at some point we need to think about, once, let's assume the building official, whatever he says, they need a permit, which frankly isn't that big of a deal. The contractor just gets the permit and hopefully the fees are waived and that kind of stuff. But then as we move forward now with the final design to really start putting the fine touches and everything, at some point we need to engage the homeowners and get their buy-in, because ultimately we will need them to execute one of those temporary access agreements like we did last time. So again, we don't need to think about it or decide on something on this call, but think about how that happens, right? Does it start with a phone call? Is it a letter? At some point, I imagine the homeowners are going to say, well, what is it that you want to do? And I think, yes, we'll have the plans, but at some point, I'm thinking we'll probably have to meet with them down there. And I remember we had talked about this way back. And it was before the the COVID-19 pandemic. But I think what's ultimately probably going to happen, it's going to be someone like Jesse as the landscape architect down there pointing, showing things people are going to want to see in sort of real world, because they're not going to be able to look at the drawings and understand. And we don't want to, we want to be very accommodating to people to maintain that good positive and realizing, I think Mary Jo, you had indicated there's some folks that may not be too keen on the sidewalk. So we want to tread very carefully as we approach these people.
Hey, Kurt, is it possible to do one of your mock-ups that you do, you've done for Hartford Avenue before, where you show what it will look like? So you don't have to visualize from a blueprint. You can see what the finished product will be.
Yeah, Jesse, what do you think? And that could be used for all the homeowners, but to say, this is an example of what it would look like. What do you think, Jesse?
Yeah, we could show them, steps if that's what they want to provide the added access. We could show kind of a retaining structure with a little bit of plantings on the edge, or it's just grass. Just and then again within that retaining structure option, there's say two choices that they could pick from. for material.
Yeah, and maybe with those visuals, even if it's a few of the homeowners say, hey, I think that looks good. Yeah, I'm good with it. And we're done right there. And then if a few say, no, I still want to meet out there, whatever, that's okay. So even then, meeting out there, giving those visuals to them to say, this is what it would look like. I think that'd be a very helpful tool. And then we can even use those in our public presentation as examples.
This is Eric. Those are all good ideas. In my opinion, we limit the amount of options that people have. I would say no more than 3. 2, I think, is a good number. As far as the properties that we have to do a little bit above and beyond what we planned on. So that's my opinion. 2 or 3 options of a choice, and leave it at that.
So let's see, we know the slope would be one option, and we'll call that the basic option. The second option would be some sort of retaining wall. And Jesse, what was the third one you had mentioned?
Stairs.
Oh yeah.
Just specific to, in front of their doorway where there's a walkway existing.
So that only affects a few of those properties. So in a way, that's almost a unique. So I like that idea that it's either slope or wall, but then for those people that have stairs, we show them that third, because it goes back to that maintaining a connection that we were talking about. We can't slope the walk because it'd be too steep. But I don't think, Jesse, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think all of them would need or would have the option for stairs, right? We could look at it, but I agree. We give them, look, you can have a slope or a little retaining wall. And frankly, the colors for the retaining wall, that's really easy, right? That's just a product when the contractor ultimately makes the phone call. He just says, yep, give me these blocks in gray, or give me these blocks in tan. It's the same thing. So we could always just tell people, look, we'll give you a couple of options based on what our standard colors for what these things are manufactured in, and you can pick. The steps obviously would just be plain, non-colored, standard concrete. We'll develop a specific count, and we'll point that out when we send that to you, Mary Jo, on which ones could utilize stairs. So we can be very specific.
Okay.
And back to what Jim was saying earlier, if someone else says, hey, wait a second, I want stairs. Well, there's not stairs there now. There's not a walkway there now. We are focusing on what's there. If it's not there now, we're not going to be giving you new. We're trying to connect to something existing. And I think that makes sense.
I agree with that. And anything you sent me, obviously, I'll send it out to the committee too.
Okay, so we'll get that in the works immediately.
Okay. So just for process, you're going to work on the individual properties and an overall pictorial, if you will. We are going to share that with the building official to get his input and or advice on whether he needs to get more involved or not for permitting by the when we start construction. And then these properties, that information that you're putting together, your expectation is that they will go via mail first and ask for face-to-face? I'm a little fuzzy on that part of it.
It's whatever the committee thinks is the best approach. I know that some people you've already established contact with. I think there may be a few that you haven't heard from. So, and it may be a different approach depending on who the people are, in fact. So I'll kind of defer to the committee
Okay.
on how that, because, sometimes some people may respond better to a phone call.
Right.
And you guys know these people better than we do. So maybe give that some thought, depending on the individual. What's the best way to make this initial overture?
Yeah, I mean, there are people that we have not heard from. And again, and I'm not even sure. I guess we'll have to wait and see, because we kind of talked about this 2 weeks ago. Once we see your write-ups, I think maybe the committee then can talk about the individual write-up and the approach, but I hesitate to know what to do at this point until we see the write-ups.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So those graphics, I think, will be very important.
Yeah. And there are people we have not heard from, and if you had felt we didn't need to worry about them, we didn't. But if indeed we may need to worry about them, that's a different.
And that's a great point, Mary Jo. We should think about the potential issue of if we felt like we did need to get on someone's property for something and we simply can't get a response from them. What is our default position? And that's probably just going to be slope it down to the edge of right of way. And if later on somebody says, hey, wait a second, what's going on here? We tried to get a hold of you. We sent you a letter or whatever, as long as it's well documented. We got no response. Therefore, we just slope down to the edge of the right of way and it's grass.
And the letter whatever we send to them needs to be really clear on that, here's the date we need to hear from you, or you need to send whatever we say, we send it certified, whatever we need to do to make sure that we have done due diligence. I know Frank was going to look for that one person. I want to say it was the Cohen residence. I'm pretty sure that was it. I'm blanking. I don't have my little cheat sheet of what address that is. He thought maybe somebody from Miami had the contact for that.
Okay.
But I haven't heard back from him on that.
All right.
We're also going to have a public meeting at some point. So I know we're doing this exercise to make sure that we, give people the heads up as to what's happening. We're trying to hit the hot spots before they, become even hotter. But the public meeting usually flushes out, a couple more people. So that'll be another chance for the property owner to address any concerns, that we haven't addressed already beforehand.
Right. It would be nice to put all that information on one letter, so we don't have to keep sending out too much information. Right. When that meeting is expected to happen, and I think we've been telling people June. So.
Yeah, and I still think that's a good time frame.
Yeah, I think if we go much later, I don't know. I think we'll probably not make our dates to go out to bid.
Yeah, and certainly with Harford Avenue, we'll absolutely be ready. I mean, today is sort of the transition to final design based on where we are. So I'm very confident that we can get it wrapped up, get it done.
Can I I'll give the building official, his name is Mark Whalen, heads up. And can I tell him that he'll get this information by next week?
Yes, definitely. Yep.
And then what I would really like to do, because I do not feel qualified to have any discussions on this regarding the actual plans, is perhaps after he looks at it, he can have a conference call with you and Jesse.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yep.
you know, I can make the committee aware of when that call is if they want to
Okay.
call
Absolutely.
and make it a meeting. Otherwise, if
Yeah.
no one really cares, we can give them a summation.
Right. Yeah, it'd be similar to if we went to see him at his office to go over the plans. I think that's a great idea.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Okay, so I'll tell him that's coming next week and that we need his, depending on his schedule, a real quick review.
Okay.
How about Kurt? Have you had a chance to talk with Dave Roberge on the fire hydrant issues, concerns?
I have not yet. I wanted to get the kind of the final sign off on the sidewalk itself because I do want to send him an example plan. So I wanted to wait till this meeting just to kind of confirm that now we know, okay, that's where it's going to be. There's the curb cuts, et cetera, et cetera. Sounds like we're there. We know where back a sidewalk is, et cetera. So now
Okay.
that we sort of transitioned into the final design, we know where it is. I can send him that information, highlight where the hydrants are, and then also reach out to Connecticut Water. And I just wanted to, again, wait till we had the final layout of the sidewalk.
Okay, because Dave and the building official work very closely, so timing is good.
Okay. And yeah, if we could always have Dave Roberge on that call too, if he felt it was.
I did invite him to today's meeting, but you know, he's kind of busy fighting a pandemic, so I suspect
Yeah.
a personal call will go further.
Yep. Okay. Another item that I had from our last meeting was the mailboxes. We had talked about putting in a sleeve using the DOT kind of standard, slightly modified. They have a standard sleeve that they use for signposts, but we'll slightly modify it for mailboxes. Putting in a sleeve for everybody in case a mailbox had to go in the future. And then for those people that do have mailboxes, having the project install them. And Mary Jo, I had sent you kind of a summary. Did you want me to show that on my screen?
Yeah, I did send that to everyone, but yeah, please.
Okay. Very simple. So I will open those up. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So pretty simple. It's and Home Depot was, I did a few searches and that's what came up, but it'll be by specification. So the supplier is sort of inconsequential, but basically it's a powder coated steel post, black, and then it's basically a what I call a standard steel mailbox, black. That post lends itself very well to the sleeve that you see there, and that's the Condot standard, and as I mentioned, modified for the sidewalk mailbox installation. But this is kind of what we would include in the contract documents. And frankly, if somebody didn't like the black mailbox, it's their mailbox, they could replace it or paint, it's one of those things where, look, as part of the project, this is what you're getting. And at some later time, if you want to have a fancier, different one, fine, you can replace it.
Yeah, I think if I recall our conversation at the last meeting, I think the only person I remember having comments specifically was Frank, who said he, was looking for something more attractive. But I think that what you've shown is very utilitarian, which I think is probably the ideal for our project. But I also know that we had a discussion, we didn't come to any resolution on whether we do just do, as you explained, with the sleeves and putting in the boxes to replace the ones that do. I know Jim had some question as to whether we should have some alternative placements, grouping clusters of mailboxes. I don't think we came to a decision on that.
Yeah, and just to tack on to what you just said, Mary Jo, I did a lot of research looking for decorative steel posts. And I feel that steel is appropriate because they're going into a sleeve. So if you go with, let's say, a pressure treated 4x4, or even some of the decorative posts that are made out of polymers, fiberglass, PVC, they start to get to be even 6x6 at their base, because a lot of those are actually made out of PVC fence posts. In fact, at one time I had one of those in front of my house till the snowplow broke it, and I realized that they're not as strong as you think. They look nice, but it lasted 2 winters.
Yeah.
The concern with the large base is now our sleeve starts to get very large. So when you think about a 4-inch post, we would probably need at least a 5-inch sleeve in the sidewalk. That starts to get pretty big. So then I liked the idea of this steel post, very strong. It's along the lines of a fence post. It's probably 2-inch diameter. So then we could use a 4-inch sleeve. The other thing I found, I started doing a bunch of searches for decorative steel posts. I wanted to stick with the steel. And I was pretty surprised at the cost of the decorative steel. I'm talking between $200 and $300. Because of the uniqueness of it.
Yeah.
Whereas the regular round post, steel tube is widely available, very affordable. As soon as you transition into some sort of decorative kind of thing, now it's supply and demand. Manufacturing becomes much more difficult, and you pay for it. So it was kind of surprising because I originally was thinking maybe there's something that has a little decorative touch to it that's made of steel, and I was really, really surprised at the cost of those, and that's how I ended up here.
Okay. I'm not surprised at that personally.
I mean, if the committee felt that decorative was the way to go, we can certainly include it, but it could add up.
My personal opinion, and I'll ask for everybody's, is I prefer the utilitarian one. I mean, we do have snow plows that come down through there, and I don't want to ramp up our costs, and as long as it meets the U.S. postal federal guidelines, whatever, that's my preference. So I'll leave it up to the rest of the members.
Eric, I agree with what Mary Jo said. That one you sent, Kurt, it looks fine to me and works for the project.
This is Jim. Same for me. I'm all for the utilitarian post. I don't think we should go overboard on this detail. Quick question on the sleeves. If we install sleeves for houses without mailboxes currently, is that just essentially a hole in the sidewalk at that point, or is there some sort of plug that goes over it, or what does that look like if the mailbox doesn't get installed?
Yep, great question. Typically what we would do, the sleeve would go in, and again, it's just a piece of Schedule 40 PVC that goes down probably 3 feet. It would get filled with sand, and then the top inch would get filled with a pourable non-shrink grout. So it's relatively durable for what's out there. But if somebody wanted to put a sidewalk in, that could easily be chipped out.
Okay.
And it sticks to the PVC just enough that it stays put. But if somebody went in there with a chisel, and they could easily remove it, and then the sand would have to get evacuated, and that could literally be done with a shop vac.
Mm-hmm.
And then the post could get put in.
Sounds good.
And just to note, you would see that at the surface, but you'll see the little round, but it's pretty subtle. After a while, it just disappears into the,
How many homes are we talking about that will have the marking for it versus not having the box? I think last time maybe we had thought we had like 6 mailboxes or so to go in.
Yeah, we could do a definitive count. It's like a 50-50, I think, but we'll do a definitive count.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll show them. We'll show those on the drawings now that we're getting into the to the high level of detail for final design. We'll show exactly where those would go.
Okay. I like Jim's idea about having some cluster thing. I mean, I think that you see that more and more, but we could still have that option even if we had the sleeve at some point if the homeowners decided they wanted to have kind of like what they had down at the community center. That could still happen, but this way they have an option of going both routes, correct?
Yeah, definitely. So they could put in a post and then they could mount 3 mailboxes on it.
I know in these COVID times, I'm getting a daily delivery from Amazon, for example, and I need a mailbox more than ever. Cake mix doesn't fit in one of those little things.
The other thing that I wanted to show, if it's okay, I happen to be, this is here in Colchester, where I'm coming to you from Colchester now.
You'll be there all week.
I was pulling out of the Stop and Shop here, and I noticed that they had done a project along Route 16. Let me rotate this photo. Not the best photo because I was stopped and I took it out my car window, but it was an example of the stamped. Can everybody see that?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Kind of a poor photo, but as you can see there, they added the extra width with stamped concrete colored.
Oh,
Little bit of a wavy line because I think they adapted onto an existing sidewalk, and
oh.
so I would hope that the workmanship would be a little better. Yeah, I don't like to see that waviness, but
That kind of looks like crap. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. But this is sort of an example of just, I hesitate to say of
I like
what
what you
it would look like, but
Yeah, I like what you showed us before better.
yeah.
But I see how other people have adapted.
Yeah. We hope that we get better workmanship than they got here. One of the problems was, I remember when they did this, they did it in the middle of the winter. And I've always said that's just the worst time to do this kind of work. You just do not get good results.
I don't even see really what that bought them, honestly.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think what ended up happening was, I think they had a grant, and behind me or on the other side of my car, there's a new section of sidewalk because they did a little development. And I think they realized when this sidewalk was put in, I believe it was part of the Stop and Shop development. If you notice, the original sidewalk is not 5 feet wide.
Yeah.
So this was their way of making it 5 feet wide by adding this on.
Wow.
So not necessarily the best approach, but best example of real world I could find. And it happened to, as I was looking to the left, getting ready to pull out, I said, oh, I got to get a picture of that. But, yeah. So here's an example, but ours is going to look good.
Good. And that wasn't your work anyway. We
No,
like
definitely not. Yeah, definitely not. And that's where, that's where the punch list comes in, and even being very detailed when Jesse puts together the finer points of the design, making sure that the contractor knows, look, this is the standard, don't give us wavy lines and make sure that the lines of the simulator brick are crisp and straight, and we'll make sure that we hold them to that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Any other things for Hartford Avenue on your list?
I think that was everything I have. Jesse, anything else on your list?
Not that I can think of. Well, I guess there is one on the first phase. We had some decorative signposts for the sign, stop signs and things like that. Are we continuing that?
We talked about that a few meetings ago, and I think Kurt shared that we were just going to use the signs we have and put the standard galvanized DOT standard posts
Okay.
signs. And is the committee still on board with that?
And
Yeah.
just to clarify, for the first project, we only use the decorative posts for the street signs. And I think at the end down at Pond, because there was a combination street and stop. For the remainder of it, we still did use the standard posts. For example, the no parking signs, etc.
Okay.
So the one area that I would recommend maybe we take a look at a decorative post is right at the corner of Hartford and Bocce. We have a stop sign, and it also has the parking sign below it. There's a potential where if you wanted, we already have the roadway sign. It's right next to the
Yeah.
center, but we could make that last stop sign the exact same post as the other ones. It would be the only one, but it might create some nice continuity. Just a suggestion.
And that's
Sounds good.
that's the only stop sign, street sign combo in the entire Upper Hartford project, as far as I know, right?
Yes, the only other stop sign is actually up at the end of Hartford Avenue, but I would
Right.
not recommend because that's into DOT right of way, and
That's on the other. That's on the other side too. That's on the gas
Yep.
station side, if I recall.
Correct.
I think it'd be nice to have that tie in with the other stop signs, since it's the only, it's the only one.
I agree with you, Jim.
I think it'd be a nice touch.
Yeah.
Eric?
Yeah, I like that idea.
I think this one, because it's going to be a cost item, I'd like a motion on to accept a decorative signpost at Bocce and Hartford Avenue.
This is Eric. I'll make a motion that we make the signpost for the stop sign at Bocce Lane and Hartford Avenue similar or the same as the ones on the lower part of Hartford Avenue.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you, Jim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you, guys. See, give us another one like that, Kurt.
Those are easy. We like those. Yeah, I think that'll look nice. So I think that's Hartford Avenue. We will forge ahead with wrapping things up, getting the ideas laid out for the 4 properties, get everything pulled together, examples that Jesse will pull together, graphical examples. We'll put that package together. We'll get it to you, Mary Jo. Then let us know if you'd like us to have a call with the building official. Glad to do just like this, to walk them through things, whatever's needed. And then ultimately from that, we can define how we begin to reach out to the homeowners to start securing their approvals.
Great. Just along the line, Kurt, have BSC Group had any one-on-one meetings with people during this period? And if so, how have you handled that?
We have not, kind of like what you saw. Well, we have, and they've been where we've stayed 6 feet apart, very similar to when you saw us down there that day. We've actually chatted with folks and we have our masks on and we just kind of chat from 6, 7 feet apart and do the best we can. We've had site walks, things like that. And we found that everybody's been pretty good. They recognize, you know, with the masks, and nobody obviously shakes hands, and people try to stay far apart. Clearly not ideal, but we try to make it work. As an example, we've really tried to pretty much eliminate the exchange of papers and those things. So as an example, if we ended up, let's say we ended up having a meeting with a homeowner down here, we would email them the materials. Well, you would, I mean, the project.
I don't think you're necessarily going to have email to all these people, but just
Okay. And we would say, look, if this is ideal, if somebody says, hey, I don't have email, I don't have, then maybe we put something in an envelope.
Yeah.
Right. And we sort of leave the envelope, even like right then there at the meeting, we put it in a nice Tyvek envelope or something. And we say, hey, we're going to leave it on the step. You know, that's your package.
Yep.
You can open it. It has the drawings, and we're going to stay over here. You stay over there. We have the same drawings that we've brought. And then we kind of walk through and say, okay, if you look at page 1, oh, okay, page 1, you can, and we just walk through it like that.
Okay.
That way we just try to maintain that separation.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Anything else?
From our end, I think that's it for Harford Avenue. So if everybody else is good, we can transition to Shore Road.
Okay, please do.
Okay, so unfortunately, I had sent the materials, I think it was the day after our meeting, to Rick Chapman, who's my point of contact over at DOT District 2. He's their traffic lead, and he's the gentleman that I was told to coordinate with. I've had a couple discussions with him. They are working on kind of like a 1 week in, 1 week out type of work arrangement to minimize the number of people in the office. I emailed him Thursday to check in, and then Friday morning got an email back from him, and he said, I have not looked at your materials yet, which was kind of disappointing. And he said, I had a death in the family. I've been out. It's on my to-do list.
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you. And I didn't want to push. As soon as he said I had a death in the family, so I said, understood, Rick, my condolences. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to me. So Jesse and I were talking about this morning. Now the question is, how long do I wait? So what I was thinking is I'll give him maybe to the end of this week, and maybe on Friday, just send him a very simple email. Hey, Rick, just checking in. In hopes that, so on Shore Road, because we have zero feedback, we don't really have anything to report. That right now, DOT is the linchpin of the whole thing, to get their feedback.
Thank you.
I did want to share, if it's okay, a couple of photos, and again, it was from the town of Hebron, where they did a sidewalk on Route 85. And it's just something, it caught my eye that, oh wow, that's going to look very similar to Shore Road. So this is kind of what it's going to look like. There's our sidewalk. You know, you've got the grass strip where all their signs go that they've requested. You've got the 5-foot kind of standard DOT sidewalk. Here's a good example of one of the, as you can see, they haven't even finished paving here, but good example of one of the ramps at one of the roadway crossings. We'll do the same exact thing. This is all DOT standard. And Jesse already has all those ramps in the package. That'll just get used. You can see the curb returns there. Here they use concrete. We're going to use bituminous unless DOT says we want it to be concrete. We'll see. Along Route 85 here, it's all bituminous curb on this side. So you can see where they used the concrete and then ended and then linked up with the bituminous. To the right of the drawing, you can see on this particular property, there's concrete curbing that they just butted up against. But whatever DOT allows us to do, our default will be bituminous unless they make us do concrete. But yeah, I thought this was kind of a good example. You can see the utility poles. In this case, they got lucky. The poles weren't in their way. We have a few spots, and I'll share another photo that I took from the other direction.
That looked nice, Kurt.
That's exactly what it looked like. I thought it was kind of neat to, okay, no, that's the other side. Okay, so this is, you'll recognize this from a few minutes ago. Just a little further back, but there's an example because you can see the street sign. Again, you can see the curb returns. Even we have a few situations, I think, where we even have a catch basin right near, and you see they just work around it. You know, they saw cut the pavement, and that's that patch that you see. That's because they saw cut the pavement. If we do bituminous curb, I'm going to see if we can get away with not having to saw cut by putting the bituminous curb right on top of the top course. We'll see what DOT says, but I'm thinking if we clean it, put tack coat on there, could save us a little bit of money. But that's a classic example of where they're going to really dictate, you know, what happens. But yeah, another example, you can see down a little further down, you see there's a little jog in the sidewalk, and they actually did sidewalk on both sides of the street here. And they did in some areas have to move around utility poles and whatnot. And we'll do the same thing, but make it look nice. We won't make it look like a serpent. We'll have some thought behind it, so there's as few transitions as possible. But yeah, good example of kind of what Shore Road will look like. So yeah, on Shore Road, that's unfortunately it because of the lack of feedback from DOT. Speaking of DOT, we did send them the project update form that went up to Craig Babowitz at Newington. I had emailed him asking about grant extensions, if there was anything we needed to know about in light of the COVID-19 issues. And he said, no, not really. He said, you know, it is what it is, and you've got your schedule, and there you go. So pretty limited communication. So, okay. If we did have any more specific questions for him, I'm happy to email him. When I sent them the form, I said, is there anything else you need? We're happy to have a call with you if there's additional detail. And I haven't heard back from him. So
Do you know if he's going to queue us each quarter for this form, or do we have to queue, just know to send that same form but repopulate it back to him each quarter?
yeah, that's a great question. Let me ask him. I'll find out.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm happy to put those together. Now that I've got the first one filled out, I can, you know, pretty straightforward.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm happy to do that if he says, and if he says, no, you have to do it, I'll just put a calendar invite in my calendar and I'll just quarterly get that to him.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Okay,
Um,
anything else on that?
I think that's it, unfortunately. So hopefully we will get some feedback from DOT soon and can move that into final design once we get some of their details. And
if that's all, can we then set another meeting up, like for the first week in June? Because hopefully by then we'll have the feedback from building official, maybe Dave Roberge, we'll have the specific property owners' options to share with them, and then we could set up a time or a plan to deal with that, and then set a plan for meeting, some kind of meeting with the property owners, at least on Hartford Avenue.
I'd love to meet in 2 weeks if that's okay with everybody. Maybe that first week in June would be great.
I was going to suggest Tuesday, June 2nd, as opposed to Monday.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Great for BSC.
How about Jim and Eric? It looks like we lost.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Thank you. We'll do the 10 a.m. again. That's okay with you guys?
Works for us, absolutely.
I'm
Sure.
assuming it'll still be WebEx. All right.
I may have to dip out at about 11 o'clock on that one.
Okay. All right.
But-
I know these are long. Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. Okay. Then any invoice approvals that we need to consider?
I think it's been a month. I can't remember. If it has, I'll send out another invoice I'm not even sure but yes, if it's been a month, I'll do another invoice, keep myself out of trouble with my boss, this week.
Sounds good. Hey, you're the boss. All right. Then our minutes from last month. I hope everyone got them. Are there any corrections, changes that people noted?
It looked good.
Look good to me.
I only have one change myself under preliminary design status, the third bullet. The last sentence there, it says all owners have received a general letter regarding the project. I think I should have put all owners on Hartford Avenue. So I think I'd just like to make that clarification. So with
Okay.
that clarification, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Oh, go ahead, Jim.
Oh, it's all you, Eric.
I'll second your motion.
All right.
Thank you, guys. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All of us in favor. Thank you, guys. All right, I guess unless there's any final comments, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a
I'll make
motion
that
to
motion.
adjourn.
I'm gonna say that one was Eric and Jim. Eric, all in favor?
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, BSC. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you, everybody. If we don't talk to you, please have a great Memorial Day weekend, and we'll be working on this. Looking forward to the next meeting, getting everything to you next week, Mary Jo.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Good
Thanks,
to
Mary
you.
Jo. Thanks, Eric.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.